Black veteran denied first class. 45 minutes later, the entire airline was in chaos. Before we dive into this story, drop your city or country in the comments and let's see how far this story reaches. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to subscribe. Something shocking is about to unfold in a quiet airport terminal, and what happens next will leave everyone watching stunned. This isn't just a story about a flight, it's about courage, dignity, and standing up to injustice in the most unexpected way. Stay with us until the very end. Robert Hayes, 64, was no ordinary man. A retired Army sergeant, he had served multiple tours overseas, earning medals for bravery and risking his life to save others. Yet, despite his heroism, Robert carried himself with quiet humility. He never sought attention, rarely spoke about his service, and lived a simple, disciplined life. Today, he had a reason to celebrate his granddaughter's graduation. She had surprised him with a first-class ticket to attend the ceremony. A small gesture to honor the man who had given so much. Standing in a busy airport terminal, dressed in a clean pressed suit, Robert seemed out of place, not because of who he was, but because the world didn't always recognize quiet heroes. Robert approached the first-class gate, ticket in hand, expecting nothing more than a smooth boarding. The gate agent, however, barely glanced at him. "This isn't for you," she said, snatching the ticket and motioning him aside. No apology, no explanation. Shocked passengers glanced in his direction, but Robert remained calm. He didn't argue, he simply nodded, accepted the new ticket printed for economy, and walked toward the back of the plane. What he didn't know was that someone had noticed, someone who understood what was happening and wasn't about to let it slide. Suspense quietly built as the scene unfolded, and the calm veteran became the center of an unfolding storm. Vanessa sat nearby, dressed like any ordinary passenger, but she was far from ordinary. A young operations investigator for the Department of Transportation. She spent her days tracking discriminatory practices in travel. Today, she recognized a familiar pattern and it made her stomach tighten. She had seen this injustice before, but this time, it involved a decorated military veteran. Pulling out her phone discreetly, she began recording and sending notes to her team. Quietly gathering evidence of the incident, Vanessa knew that what happened next could escalate quickly. Every second counted, and her sharp instincts told her that this wasn't just a minor complaint. Something significant was about to happen, and she was determined to make sure justice was served. With a few quick texts and internal emails, Vanessa set a chain reaction into motion. The airline's internal system immediately flagged the incident. A decorated veteran had been denied his first-class seat without justification. Within minutes, alerts reached higher levels of management, triggering an internal review and corporate escalation. Everyone was on edge, but passengers remained unaware, sitting calmly as if nothing were happening. Meanwhile, the clock ticked. There were 45 minutes before the plane was scheduled to take off. Short window for the system to intervene and for justice to reach Robert Hayes. Behind the scenes, technology, protocol, and human determination were aligning, preparing to turn a quiet injustice into a dramatic confrontation. The plane began taxiing toward the runway, and tension crackled in the air. Phones rang between the gate, the pilot, and airline executives. Security and corporate personnel hurried through the terminal, rushing to coordinate the unfolding situation. Passengers remained unaware of the storm brewing just beyond their view, chatting and reading quietly. The suspense was mounting. Every step of the airline's response happened behind the scenes, invisible to the people on board, but each moment drew the situation closer to a dramatic climax. The stage was set, and everyone, from Robert to the highest-ranking executive, was about to be part of an extraordinary chain of events. Suddenly, the aircraft returned to the gate. Flight attendants exchanged nervous glances as passengers murmured in confusion. Then, the airline president himself boarded, walking straight down the aisle with a purposeful, calm stride. Phones were lifted to record every moment. He stopped in front of Robert, looking him in the eye. "Mr. Hayes," he said, his voice steady but serious, "on behalf of this airline, I apologize. You were mistreated, and that is unacceptable." Robert didn't rise. He simply met the president's gaze and replied softly, "I served so people could be treated equally. I guess that flight still hasn't landed." The cabin fell silent. The message was clear. This wasn't just about a seat, it was about respect, dignity, and standing up for what's right. The gate agent who denied Robert's first-class seat was immediately escorted off the premises and terminated. Airline staff acted swiftly to correct the mistake. Robert was reseated in his first-class window seat, finally enjoying the comfort he had rightfully earned. But the moment was bigger than a seat, it was about respect, recognition, and accountability. Passengers around him watched intently, many recording the unfolding events on their phones. Whispers of astonishment filled the cabin as people realized what had just happened. The airline had officially acknowledged wrongdoing, and a quiet sense of justice spread through the plane. Robert remained calm, his dignity intact, showing that true courage often comes without words. The world was witnessing not just a resolution, but a powerful lesson in fairness and humanity. Within hours, videos of the incident went viral on social media. Millions of viewers watched Robert's calm, dignified response and the airline president's apology. Veterans groups, civil rights organizations, and everyday citizens joined the conversation, sharing outrage and support. Public pressure mounted rapidly, forcing the airline to announce mandatory anti-bias measures across all airports. News outlets picked up the story, highlighting systemic issues and the importance of respecting veterans. One single act of injustice had triggered a massive ripple effect, proving that standing up or noticing injustice can have far-reaching consequences. The story became more than a viral moment. It became a lesson in accountability, awareness, and how ordinary people can spark extraordinary change. Robert eventually attended his granddaughter's graduation, quietly proud but humble, never speaking publicly about the incident. Vanessa, whose quick actions had initiated the corporate response, was promoted and now leads a national task force on racial equity in travel. The airline rolled out comprehensive anti-bias training for all employees, ensuring this wouldn't happen again. Robert became a symbol not of anger or resentment, but of quiet dignity and resilience, showing that heroism doesn't always come with headlines. His story reminded people everywhere that courage can be silent, that standing firm doesn't require confrontation, and that even small acts of recognition can ripple outward, changing organizations, policies, and attitudes for the better. This story highlights courage, dignity, and the quiet strength it takes to endure injustice without losing one's humanity. Robert's response, Vanessa's intervention, and the airline's eventual accountability all show how ordinary actions can create extraordinary outcomes. Now, it's your turn. Would you have stayed silent or acted like Vanessa? Think about the heroes who walk among us unnoticed every day. Share your thoughts in the comments, discuss with friends, or pass this story along. Courage, respect, and fairness are contagious. Let's keep the conversation going and recognize those who make the world a better place.